This meeting's being recorded, so if anyone doesn't want to be recorded, you need to turn your video and audio off. Great, Zach. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started here. How does it sound online? Good? Seeing some thumbs. Okay, so we can get started with this June meeting of the Air Quality Control Advisory Council. Mr. Chair, I believe we've confirmed we do have a quorum, but we could do roll call as well at the top.
Excellent. Let's start with those in the room. Good morning. My name is Jason. I am the chair of ACAC.
Ben Hobbs, Johns Hopkins, the vice chair.
Larry Schoen, American Society of Mechanical Engineers. I feel like I've been here forever.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel Morton. I'm from the University of Maryland School of Public Health. Hi, Sunny Park. I'm from American Institute of Chemical Engineers.
Ross Salowich, also at University of Maryland.
And those who are online, if you could introduce yourselves, the council members, please.
Sania Amr, University of Maryland School of Medicine.
Megan Weil-Latchall, Johns Hopkins University School of Public Health.
Nicole Cook, University of Maryland Agricultural Law Education Initiative at UMES.
Weston Young, representing the Maryland Association of Counties.
Tom Dodoga, Prince George's County Council, representing the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments.
Good morning, Ann Cleese, representing the Maryland Chamber of Commerce Public Utilities.
And Rebecca Rear, I'm with the Maryland League of Conservation Voters.
Okay.
Great. Thanks to the council for joining. So we do have a quorum. I have some introductory remarks if you'd like to go for it. Okay, thank you. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming. We have on today's agenda, we have one action item and a couple of briefing items. Some updates from MDE at the top. We are in the ozone season now. We've had sort of an okay season so far. We had 2 exceedance days in May, and we just had our first for June on Friday. And Fridays was kind of a big one, so we'll be taking a look carefully. It was pretty widespread, and in some at some stations we were measuring pretty high ozone. So we'll be looking into what was unique about Friday later on. So 3 exceedances so far is sort of not the worst we've seen. It's obviously not the best. We are working toward, we are now measuring attainment with the ozone standard based on the prior 3 years. So we have been working with EPA through the various processes to codify that for the 3 metro areas that we are involved in, the DC area, the Baltimore area, and the Philadelphia area. So we can talk more with anyone who's interested about the various processes at EPA to sort of formally designate all of the parts of Maryland as in attainment with the ozone standard. That'll take a while. But it's good news, and we'll hear more about that at the Clean Air Progress Report briefing item a little later. We made a lot of progress, and we are measuring now air quality throughout the state right at the standard. So depending on how this year goes, we will be finding ourselves potentially at the end of the summer with formal attainment. If we got a bad year this year that bumps us back out of attainment, then we'll be revisiting the processes with EPA. But we are right on the edge. A lot of progress, but we need to make sure that we keep that progress, because only a little bit will push us right back out of attainment for the ozone standard. So for that reason, we're still working on lots of regulations that can help us, whether we find ourselves, edging out of attainment this year and we need to claw back in, or we're continuing barely in attainment. We need to put more measures in place to ensure we stay there. Especially since we're seeing a lot of federal backsliding. Lots of federal rules are being rescinded, dialed back, Other actions that aren't formally rulemakings are also not helping, where, rules are being suspended under an emergency authority here or there, or whether there are more specific actions that could set us back. So that's all to say we are getting close to a point where, as a legal matter, we'll be sort of declaring victory on ozone pollution in terms of meeting the standard. Not that it's not important to keep reducing pollution levels below the standard, but we also need to stay vigilant and keep putting programs in place. So a couple of regulations that we are stakeholdering right now that have not yet found their way to the council are some improvements to fueling equipment at gas stations. These are improvements that have been put in place in some of our neighboring states, including Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I believe we briefed on that last year while we were stakeholdering. I don't recall. We've been stakeholdering that for a little while, so we may be bringing that forward. That would reduce evaporation from gasoline, which is a volatile organic compound and contributes to ozone and other issues. We are also going to be getting to stakeholder another set of consumer products standards. We've gone through several rounds of consumer products regulations to reduce VOC from various consumer products. We're going to be stakeholdering that shortly as well. So that'll come to you all depending on how that stakeholder process goes, potentially later this year, potentially next year. We're also active on the climate change front. You'll hear more about that during a briefing item later, as we're continuing to work on our suite of clean heat rules, which will reduce various types of pollution from fuel combustion in buildings, both greenhouse gases as well as nitrogen oxides, as the building sector is now our second largest source of NOx pollution. So there are a lot of regs working through the process that's sort of the pre-ACAC process. So things to be aware of that are coming in the future that are briefing items. And then today we have one item that is effectively ensuring that our old Clean Cars program is still in place in key ways, while the new Clean Cars program is going through litigation over federal action last year that removed the state's authority to have the Clean Cars, what was going to be called the Clean Cars 2 program, which is the state level program to encourage electric vehicles, as well as reducing pollution from tailpipes and other ways. So we'll have an action today just to ensure that some fundamental elements of the old program are still in place. You'll hear more about that later. It's not the electric vehicle component of it. It's other pieces that the states are all putting in place so that we have some program continuity while the litigation over the program plays out. So lots of exciting stuff. We are sort of on the knife's edge here for air quality, hopefully finding ourselves onto the good end of it as this ozone season progresses.
Before we get into the action items, we need to go ahead and review and approve the minutes. Has everybody on the council had an opportunity to review the minutes? Does anybody have any changes, corrections, or additions or subtractions? If there are not any, if I could get a motion to approve the minutes.
So,
and a second.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Nay. No nays. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. And with that, I think we're up to our first action item of the day.
Okay, thank you. So introducing the Clean Cars Amendment, Shania.
Thank you, Chris. 1 second.
So for everyone on the screen, we're hearing from Shania Herbert from our Mobile Sources program. We'll bring the slides up shortly.
Pulling up the presentation.
Yeah. 1 second.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelsey. Good morning, ACAC members. Good morning, MDE. Good morning, members of the public. My name is Shania Herbert Brown, and I am an engineer within the Mobile Sources Control Program. And today I will be given a summary on the Advanced Clean Cars Regulation Update. Next slide, please. Okay. So the purpose of our action is to update our ACC regulations, and in Maryland, that's within COMAR 2611-3402. This is important so that we maintain our more stricter vehicle emission and certification standards. Maryland is a Section 177 state of the Clean Air Act, meaning that we follow California's stricter car certification standards over the federal standards. Next slide, please. So to give a brief background on what we're doing, I'll start with ACC1. So ACC1 in Maryland started off as the Clean Cars Act of 2007, which allowed us to adopt and maintain California's ACC program. The ACC1 program would apply to vehicles of model year 2015 to 2025. This is a vehicle certification program that applies to low emission vehicles, vehicles of class 1, 2B, and 3, and vehicles that weigh less than 14,000 pounds. Next slide, please. So ACC1 was supposed to terminate in 2025, and we were supposed to follow with ACC2, which passed in 2023 in Maryland. It was originally supposed to apply for model years 2027. Governor Moore last year in April, he signed the executive order titled Ensuring Success with Advanced Clean Cars 2 and Advanced Clean Trucks in Maryland, which essentially delayed enforcement of ACC1 and the ACT program. As a part of the executive order, there was a work group with members of the public, stakeholders, and government officials and people from MDE, and they would talk about why, The purpose of the work group was to address concerns about ACC2 enforcement in Maryland, which would include charging needs, sustainability, and things of that sort. ACC2 is supposed to bring stricter emissions standards for new vehicles that would be sold in Maryland. There would be increased sale requirements of battery electric and hybrid vehicles up through model year 2035. And when we get to 2035, the sales are supposed to reach 100%. And similar to the ACT program and California's other programs, credit, banking, and trading programs are available for car manufacturers. Next slide, please. So this is a chart of what ACC2 is supposed to look like in Maryland. If it was implemented starting with model year 2027, we would start with a sales requirement of 43% battery electric and hybrid vehicles. However, we are implementing it in model year 2029, which would start with the 59% sales requirement. Next slide, please. So for the regulatory summary, ACC1 concluded in 2025. ACC2 has a delayed enforcement, and Maryland wants to make sure that the vehicles that are being sold in the state are compliant with California's stricter standards. As most of us know, last year in June, the Congressional Review Act resolutions were signed, which revoked California's ability to enforce ACC2. And I believe that was Resolution 88. There's ongoing litigation over the resolutions, as Chris mentioned previously. CARB, they passed the emergency vehicle regulations in October of 2025. And as of May of this year, they are being permanently adopted. So since Maryland is a Section 177 state, we are also adopting those emergency regulations into our ACC program. And adopting these regulations ensures the continuation of the Advanced Clean Cars program amid the current litigation. Next slide, please. So these emergency regulations would be incorporated by reference, meaning that whatever the documents from CARB state, Maryland would incorporate them word by word. And these regulations give OEMs compliance options. They can either continue with compliance through ACC1, and that only applies to the vehicle certifications and the onboard diagnostic requirements. And there are no applications for zero emission vehicles or greenhouse gas compliance or ACC1. Or OEMs can comply with ACC2, and that is completely voluntary. There are no consequences that Maryland is implementing if OEMs choose to comply with ACC2. So this administrative action is necessary to help Maryland maintain its stricter vehicle certification programs and not backslide into the less strict federal requirements. And I can take any questions.
So we'll do this the way that we normally do. We'll first have the council members will ask questions, and then we'll have a period for anybody who has any comments or questions outside of the council. Then we'll discuss further within the council and then vote on the action. First question is actually for me. If the emergency regulations are stayed in California, if somebody either in California or federal level wants to stay those, what does that
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sure. I may need to turn myself a bit, sit up straight. So the question is, if the emergency regulations that you mentioned from California are stayed, if the court takes that action and says, no, you can't do this just yet, what happens to the regulations that we're being asked to adopt today? And that may be a question for Chris.
I will deflect to Chris and Justin.
Deflect is a good choice of.
Yeah, I mean, any other members of the Mobile Sources team, please feel free to chime in. I think we could find ourselves in the same situation where we are with Clean Cars 2 right now, where we have Clean Cars 2 on the books in Maryland, but we cannot enforce it because of the federal action, because the Congressional Review Act resolution purported to remove the state's collective authority to implement that program. So if something else similar were to happen with Clean Cars 1, after we adopt this extension, I imagine we would be in a similar position. I suppose there could be some nuances depending on whether that stay was applicable to all the non-California states. I don't know if it would automatically, if someone was only challenging California's extension of California's program, whether that would then automatically extend to all of the other states who implement that, not. But that nuance aside, this program in Maryland and all of the other non-California states who implement it is contingent upon California's unique authority under the Clean Air Act. So when California loses its authority to put in a regulation under the Clean Air Act, the other states can't, because what we are doing is adopting the California program under the mechanism where we are allowed to do that under the Clean Air Act. So I think short answer would be, if California's action is challenged to a sufficient degree that it's stayed, our implementation would also be stayed. Like, that's my guess. I agree. Justin agrees.
So moved. Follow-up question. If there are further changes to the regulations that California has adopted, by our adopting and incorporating by reference their regulations, do they automatically change again without us having to take action?
No. No, we would have to incorporate every change that they make every time.
So our adoption by reference is only of the May regulations as passed them.
That's right.
In the past, we usually have to do that almost yearly because California does make tweaks. So what we would do is just bring this back again next. But yeah, we would have to incorporate any changes.
So in case those online couldn't hear on the other end of the room, the answer is that we have to reincorporate and readopt every time California changes their rules. Our incorporation by reference does not automatically update when they update their regulations. That's one of the reasons we're back before you all so often for this program, is that every time there's a change, we have to reincorporate.
Excellent. So those were my questions. Do those council members in the room have any questions?
Well, I have a similar question, but on the other side. So if California wins their court case and their aggressive movement to, do full, I thought it was full EV in 2035. Your slide said hybrid and slash EV. So it's
Plug-in hybrid.
plug-in hybrid. Yeah, okay, so if California's back on track after the court system, does its thing, my question, if you can go back to the timeline chart, are we on any chance of achieving that? I have to put my glasses on, that 59% in 2029. Where are we now in terms of our ZV, PHEV sales?
Yeah, good question. So first, under the Clean Cars 2, which is the future program that's on hold pending the litigation, up to a fifth of an annual obligation by a manufacturer can be met through plug-in hybrids rather than fully electric vehicles. So that's where the hybrids come in. So that 100% number in model year 2035, it could be 80% full electric, 20% plug-in hybrid under the terms of that reg. And so, yes, if the multi-state challenge to the federal action that has removed the state's authority is successful, then in theory, the old program comes back into effect because it's still on the books. Subject to the enforcement discretion that the governor put forward in his executive order last year, which pushed back enforcement a couple of years.
Right.
Which was why 2029 would be circled here. So are we on track? EV sales in Maryland and across the rest of the country dropped significantly after all of the removal of the federal standards and the federal incentives last year. So EV adoption was rising. September was a good month last year because it was the last month where the tax credits were available. And since then, we have not really had a good month. Sales have rebounded a touch since they fell after September, but they're still in the 8-9% range? Looking over Justin and Tim. Yeah. Yeah, so they would have to climb significantly to get back on track with Clean Cars 2. I think it's safe to say all of the states are evaluating what to do in the future. If the program were to come back into effect after a couple years off, would there be changes necessary? California has traditionally revisited and tweaked the program every couple of years anyways. So we would be coming up on that cycle again shortly. So I think short answer is, yeah, these regs will be right back in place.
Yeah.
Long answer is that we can adapt.
Just to add, like Chris said, yeah, California probably makes some adaptation.
I gotta ask, my friends behind the pillar are gonna have to come over here closer to the microphone so the people.
Really yell, or just yell.
No, not just really yell. Come on over. I hate to do that, but anyone online to be able to hear.
Being joined by Tim Shepard, Deputy Program Manager for Mobile Sources.
And the other thing to consider, like Chris said, California would make some concessions coming in late. The other thing to remember is that a lot of the manufacturers have banked a lot of credits. So even when the program was going, they weren't totally meeting these percentages with just sales. They banked a lot. They've accrued a lot from hybrid sales and so forth. So they would not have to immediately jump in at 59%. They would be, bringing in a lot. It would probably require them to use some of their bank credits, and that would help make the transition smoother.
Okay, so I get my point of saying all this is that I would like whatever we do in the state of Maryland to be realistic for achievement. And one huge difference between California and Maryland is the infrastructure for EVs is a lot more in place in California. For example, every charger out there is full and was full when I came with my EV, so I couldn't plug in today. I have enough battery to get home, so I'm good. So it's good that they're all in place, but it's sad that there's so few. So anyway, we need to grow the infrastructure here. So I'm just surprised to see this thing not slide to the right a little bit, a 2-year delay, and then coming back to this.
And it probably will slide, but right now the focus is fighting the case to get it back.
Strong cats. Questions from council members in the room?
Not a question, but just a comment. Elections have consequences and, anecdotally, the lower tech vehicles, the high tech vehicles, the EVs, the well-designed SANs that mechanical engineers have to do a lot of work to make them happen. It's decreasing market share, and it's a shame. It's a shame.
Okay, we'll move to the council members online. Does anybody online among the council members have any questions for MDE about the proposed regulations?
Can I just confirm what I heard, which is that we're currently at 8 to 9% sales? Is that
That's our top of the head number. We can confirm the actual one.
okay? Thank you.
You don't mean the total fleet. You mean that that's the percentage by month approximately that we're seeing.
Of new sales, yes. Percentage of new sales, yes.
Good question. Thank you, Rebecca. Anybody else online?
So is this just more of like an update and sort of keeping us in the loop, or is there a question on the table for us?
Yes.
We do have regulations that that have been proposed that we're gonna review and vote on shortly. But again, they're not of the technical variety that we normally see with a great deal of detail. It's really just adopting and incorporating what California has done so that we can keep up with their standard, assuming that it could.
And if I could reiterate, perhaps, so we're not even working, the action before you is not actually Clean Cars 2, which is up on the screen here, right? The action before you is pending all of the litigation and uncertainty around Clean Cars 2, extending certain provisions of the old one, Clean Cars 1. And the provisions that are being extended are not the electric vehicle provisions. So there will continue to be no electric vehicle requirements under our regulations on account of the federal stay of Clean Cars 2. We're taking some non-EV components of Clean Cars 1 and extending those. The Clean Cars program, EVs are a really important part of it, but there's a lot to it beyond the EVs. For example, the tailpipe standards for the gas vehicles, the process by which manufacturers certify that new vehicles that they're bringing to market meet all the standards, warranty requirements for the emissions control systems. So there are some of those other non-EV components from the old program that had been scheduled to expire model year 2025. This action is extending some of those baseline components beyond model year 2025 so that manufacturers can continue to certify vehicles as meeting the old standards. There is still a certification process. That's an important part of implementing the program and ensure that Marylanders are still benefiting from stronger warranty requirements for the gasoline vehicles they're purchasing, warranty requirements for the emission systems. So it is confusing. We're talking a lot about Clean Cars 2 and EVs, but the action before you is not actually about that. It's about keeping some stuff in place in the background.
And the action that is before us is the most that you can propose right now, right?
Correct. Yes.
I have one question. Are there any neighboring states that are doing this as well? Because many of the counties in Maryland are adjacent to one or some cases two other states, and Maryland citizens have the ability to buy vehicles in those adjacent states. I'm just kind of curious if, Pennsylvania or Virginia are also participating like Maryland is.
Good question. For Clean Cars 1, Tim, Justin, do you know where the other states are in the process of doing this update?
Well, just first to address your one, Pennsylvania and Virginia aren't clean car states. So Justin, you want to handle?
Justin Mabry, Division Chief, Mobile Sources Control Program. Like Tim said, they're all different. Pennsylvania they don't have the ZEV component of advanced clean cars, and Delaware is a newly adopted. Virginia is kind of newly adopted. So they're all just starting to get into the program. They're looking at it. we have a quicker process than a lot of other states in terms of being able to adopt California's programs when they do updates. So some states like New Jersey, it takes them a year or more just to do these updates, and we can move faster. That's why California hasn't even finalized the regulations yet. They haven't been fully adopted. They're not effective yet, and we're still moving ahead. So a lot of states are looking at it with plans to do that. Once they become effective in California, they have to wait, or it just takes them longer. So other states are moving forward to get the ACC1 component because they want to continue to be in the program and to continue to get those California certified vehicles, but they're not nearly as far along as we are.
Okay, thank you.
Can I segue to a broader? So on the broader question of, can a purchaser go and across the state line and buy a dirtier vehicle and title it immediately as a new vehicle in Maryland?
No, because you do still have to, when you first register a vehicle, it does have to be California certified. So you can't just go across the border and get a dirty one. That could happen if we do not adopt this, but it can't happen as the program currently exists.
Okay. So does that mean those neighboring states sometimes stock vehicles?
Yeah.
A Maryland purchase, you're shaking your heads, yes, that they
A
can.
lot of vehicles are certified, what they call 50 state compliant, so they can be sold in any state. There are very few that are not California certified in the past. Obviously, with the way the federal government's going, there's going to be probably a divergent. They're going to start certifying ones to federal standards that are less stringent, and then spending more money because it does cost more to certify to the higher standards for the specific states that have the program.
So are there any members of the public either here or online who wish to comment or ask questions about the proposed action? Sort of guessing not, but. Okay. Council members, is there any further discussion, or do we have a motion on the proposed action?
Can I just ask one more question? What I just heard was that it's more expensive to certify for the higher standard. That cost is borne by the manufacturer, correct?
And the regulation applies to the manufacturers. This is a requirement for manufacturers.
Okay,
Yeah,
so the certification, but my understanding is, so then it's a little bit more, but consumers save on average $1,000 a year in fuel costs with an EV?
Yes, with an EV, certainly. This action doesn't apply to EVs. This extends the a couple of non-EV components of the old Clean Cars program.
So even that certification, like the certification of cars in higher compliance with ACC1 components, it's more stringent than current federal standards.
Yeah, the tailpipe requirements for what pollutants can come out of the tailpipe, how much per mile, are stronger under the Clean Cars than under the federal standards.
Okay, thank you.
I just would like to thank MDE for a great presentation and for answering all our questions in great detail. I'm in favor of it.
Ross is moving in favor of adopting the proposed regulation. Sun Hee as a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Now we're going to move on to a couple of briefing items, but before we do, today is the last time that Kelsey is going to be with us. I'm acting surprised. I decided.
Fine, just saying.
Oh, yeah, yes. This is my last ACAC.
So on behalf of the council and the state of Maryland and myself and everybody else, thank you very much for all the good work. Pennsylvania's gain is our loss, but we won't hold it against them. But thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure we took a moment before we started losing people to say thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that was a little too premature because in addition, we're also losing Justin Smith, who decided to pursue his dream of teaching and inspiring higher education amongst today's youth. So it's all this.
Thank you very much as well. All the same things.
Yeah.
Very much.
Our program will be greatly diminished. So don't expect such quality presentation.
Once he teaches up the kids here locally, there won't be any need for all this. Right? Just do it. Briefing time.
All right, so we have a couple of briefings. We'll start on the climate change side with an update on our building sector activities, joined by Dr. Zach Berzola of the climate change programs buildings.
Trying to see me on the virtual screen as well. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Got a couple of different programs to give some updates about. So we'll start with the building energy performance standards. For those of you who have been here a long time, not news to you, but the building energy performance standards is for large buildings in the state, 35,000 square feet or larger. We are currently in the benchmarking period of that. And so a couple of quick updates. Calendar year 2024 benchmarking data, which is the first year of benchmarking data from these large buildings, was due. We gave some extensions. The data was due September 30th, 2025. We gave a lot of additional case-by-case extensions. And by the end of the calendar year 2025, we had a 64% compliance rate, which is actually very good for the first year of the program. Over 8,600 buildings took some action to benchmark, to request exemption. And honestly, this number keeps going up because some folks got even additional extensions, and as we've continued to work with them and things like that. So we're looking really good on that first year of the program. And now we're well underway into year two. And this year's for keeps. We use a lot of this data this year to help us look at the program and do some reevaluation that the legislature has tasked us with in House Bill 49 from last year. This is also the first year of third-party verification. So every 5 years, those buildings need to have a third party. We took a lot of feedback, actually added some additional certifications, but it's a professional engineer, a registered architect, a certified energy manager, a lead AP O&M professional. There's a couple others that I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, but there's now about 8 different certifications of folks that are familiar with buildings and building energy use that have to review your data set, make sure your building information is correct, and make sure all the energy and emissions data that gets entered into the benchmarking tool really represent your building. So we're getting great third-party verified data this year, and we're going to use that for the study and going forward. So we gave a 30-day extension this year, and so June 30th, coming up very shortly, is the benchmarking deadline. And we've already seen many buildings, over 3,000 buildings, when I checked last week, had already taken action to benchmark specifically this year. So we're in a good spot and looking forward to June 30th. Also from HB 49 of 2025, there's a $100 per year benchmarking fee that is newly implemented. That's to support the program resources or benchmarking tool and other services to provide to building owners. So we just started collecting that fee, and we'll be rolling out the additional as we're working on our support. One of those things we're doing, we offer twice weekly office hours for an hour, so building owners can come join us, work with the team. We have now 4 compliance engineers, as well as 2 folks on my staff that we hold those weekly office hours. So we've got a lot of folks working to help those building owners get their benchmarking reports in. So lots of good things going on with benchmarking right now. And then we're looking towards the future with this HB 49 study. We have the University of California, Berkeley is doing our analysis as required by the legislature, and they'll be taking all that data from benchmarking this year and looking at it and kind of recalculating the targets that we had previously set with all this new third-party verified data, seeing if there are any adjustments to be made on the targets based on all the data we've gotten from all the buildings. And so they are doing that as well. There's a whole bunch of recommendations and other study considerations that we are reviewing with Berkeley. And we're getting a lot of feedback through a stakeholder advisory group. And that's includes a bunch of members of the public, folks that own buildings, folks that represent buildings. And we're bringing to them a bunch of the questions that we're trying to answer through this study, how to approach it, how do we, what are potential alternative compliance pathways that we might recommend to the legislature for the future. So we're getting a very robust feedback. Those are pretty in-depth sessions. We meet every other month for 2 hours and get a lot of feedback kind of in the interim. And it's been really productive. We'll have our 5th session next week. And so it's been a really productive way to kind of have some dialogue and really dig in as we're analyzing and evaluating potential program changes. And so we'll be providing a report to the General Assembly at the end of this year, detailing kind of all the results of the study that we're doing, all the results of the benchmarking from this year, as well as some of these kind of recommendations and feedback that we've collated from all the stakeholders. And so we expect there to then be rulemaking in 2027 to update the standards, make any changes that kind of come down through that. So that's a quick update on BEPS. If anybody's super interested and is not signed up for our stakeholder advisory group, let me know, and we can definitely let me know afterwards. I'm happy to get you on the list. We get a lot of great feedback and a lot of deep dives in the technical weeds in that session. So that's BEPS. But yeah, more to come there. But for now, I'm going to move on to the clean heat standard. And this is really.
You want to take questions on that now or later?
I can take questions on BEPS now. Yeah.
So, in the words of my business advisor, Raymond Blank, may he rest in peace, system beats genius every time. So I think it's, great to hire outside experts who can do a third-party review. Where do you stand on creating a system, like a checklist type formalized method? For example, when I do a set of drawings, I have to comply with the energy code. And there are very detailed checklists. Do you have this feature? Add up your lighting loads and tell me the place on the drawing where it exists. Where do you stand on a formalized method that doesn't require requires so much judgment on the part of a evaluator?
Yeah, great question. So there is actually a third-party verification checklist that third-party verifier has to fill out. And it's asking them to review all the key pieces of information about the building. What's the square footage and what's the data supporting that? So they're going back and looking at the drawings, and we have a list of kind of what's acceptable documentation to sign off on certain things. So square footage is actually one of the biggest things in DC. Something like 70% of the tickets they got. So basically people requesting a change to be made to the building through third-party verification was all about square footage. Most people finding that they had put some number in because that's what the assessor has, but when they actually went out and measured it, it was often their square footage was larger than what was on the piece of paper, which when we look at targets that are per square foot means you actually get a little bit more kind of room and flexibility in meeting those targets. So gross floor area is one of the key ones, occupancy, kind of some basic data on how the building's used. So there's a bunch there. And then it asks you to go in and check all the meters, and it actually spits out, here's all the meters that has been entered into this building to make sure the whole program runs on, how all the energy data going in, right? So is it gas, it's electric, it's delivered fuels, and this kind of lays out all the meters that are there so that as the engineer reviewing and you've just looked at the drawings and you say, wow, this says that there should be, 50 units here and every unit's got an electric meter, but I only see 25 electric meters in this listing, raises a question. Now maybe we got to go do a site visit, understand, did we miss some meters, or did we end up with the meter for the building across the street? So there is this very kind of standardized checklist that actually populates for each building based on what they've already entered. And that's what we're asking folks to fill out. So they have to bring, their knowledge and background in understanding and interpreting the data, but looking through and reviewing all the key components of what makes it is standardized.
So is UC Berkeley just auditing?
So they're doing a study, they're doing a study on all the data we get in as a kind of program-wide level. And they're looking at what's the kind of, so the performance standards are set based on median greenhouse gas intensity, for example, for property type. And they're looking at, of all the office buildings and of all the warehouses, what is the actual, what's the median now with the latest data we've got? So they're basically just looking at the kind of data as a whole.
This is a study that was required in legislation passed last year that's due at the end of this year, where we're studying various elements of the program and making recommendations for potential changes.
Do you have more questions?
No, thank you for that, very encouraging and detailed answer. Appreciate it.
Oh, this is not a question, actually. I just want to give kudos to Bab's team. I called into like one of the support, like, hour, and they were really great to help me with all the questions I had. So, yeah.
I'm glad to hear it. We've got a great team working on it. It's really been quite a success, and supported both through our two teams and as well as our IT team standing up a lot of the infrastructure behind it. So, thank you. I'm glad you had a good experience. We've been getting actually a lot of good feedback from folks that it's helping, and where we need room for improvement, we work to make those improvements. So it's been a very successful first kind of year of the program.
Does anybody online among the council members have any questions or follow-ups on that portion of the briefing?
Is there anything that's really like standing out to you in the results that you're seeing or any of the feedback you're hearing? Or is it all just sort of helpful but not worth really noting at this point?
I have one good statistic to share. Of all the buildings that benchmarked last year, 30% of them are already at net zero direct greenhouse gas emissions. So 30% of them are already meeting the final standards that are 15 years away. So that's one really good thing to celebrate. Thanks for asking that question. So that's been really helpful as well. Honestly, the folks and the feedback we hear, one of the big reasons you benchmark outside of the BEPS program is to understand how your energy use is going, and maybe where there's room for improvement. Buildings finding that, that they're being billed way too much for what their energy uses, because they go put it in the program and the program says, hey, you're in the top 1% of gas users. And somebody, when they're reviewing it, says that seems wrong, and they find an issue with the billing, or sometimes it's the other way around. But just honestly then starting to understand their energy use help start this conversation. Hey, I'm spending a lot of money on this, and especially now seeing gas prices at the pump rise. But if this continues, heating fuel costs are going to continue to be elevated as well. And so this is a way to start to understand and find opportunities to just lower those costs. This data is really powerful.
I have okay, Russ.
I have a question that's maybe a little bit in the weeds, but I have your website up with all the buildings here. I was curious whether you're actually doing university buildings. Are you?
Yep.
So I would imagine that is a huge challenge, because at many universities, there's, heating from hot water, cooling from chilled water, and individual buildings are just simply not metered. Are there plans in place to do it at the building level, or you do it at the aggregate campus level? How are you handling that?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of the campuses are using what we call the campus compliance pathway. So they comply at a whole campus level. So there's one master meter for the campus. They say we've got 40 buildings, all of these different use types. And so we will develop a specific target for them at the campus level, and they just report at the campus level. And we've seen a lot of the big campuses, University of Maryland, College Park, Hopkins, up at the Homewood campus, a few others. If you're looking on our actual map, you'll see it because this is big blobs instead of the individual buildings for the whole campus.
Thank you.
Larry?
Yeah.
So a question stimulated by your answer about the 30% already complying with net zero.
Yeah.
I can't remember enough about the reg. People doing that with purchase of RECs, or are they doing it with actual on-site generation?
So they're doing that because they have no direct emissions on site right now. So, and that's just from a pure emissions smokestack perspective. So they usually that means is they're all electric. So they don't have on.
Don't count.
Correct. It's all about direct emissions on site. That's what it is. The kind of Climate Solutions Now Act specifically pegged it to direct site emissions. So that's, coming out of the kind of building system boundary.
So those, for 30% of those buildings that already achieved zero emissions, they still need to report every year, paying $100 per report.
Correct. Yeah, they are still required to report because that's, things change over time as well. As we look to the future, one of the things that was in the original legislation and in our original proposal was a energy use intensity or an energy efficiency standard. So making sure that not only are we reducing our emissions, but doing so efficiently. And those two together really bring the best benefits in energy cost savings, emissions reductions, and peak power demand management to the power grid. And so that combined program, actually, when we studied it the first time around, led to a decrease in peak demand from all these covered buildings by about 6%. So, even call it a wash, that's a really kind of big win, and that was driven by the energy efficiency standards. So that's kind of more to come. It's one of the things we're studying with this for HB 49 and the reports of the legislature.
Let's call for questions before we move on to clean heat.
Maybe I'll just note that we are going to be bringing BEPS back to you all again at some point next year. As Zach mentioned, we have to, under current law, repropose energy use intensity targets. We're going to do that based on the 2025 data that we are receiving right now. Also, what might come out of this study could be recommendations for additional enhancements. We had proposed a number of additional flexibilities to the legislature last year. Most were not adopted, and so maybe that'll be a conversation again next year, either through legislation or regulation. But no matter how that goes, one thing you all can look forward to next year is BEPS amendments.
Things we're looking up for 2026.
Yep.
Clean heat. There we go. Okay. So I've actually been here once before and already briefed you on the clean heat rules at a high level, probably about a year ago. And we've been doing stakeholdering for the last year and more. And so we're kind of continuing down that path, but we've gotten a lot more information and we've done a lot of program refinement. So I'm here to share some more with you. And as a reminder, the goal of this program is to develop a policy solution that helps all Marylanders promote cleaner air and cost-effective solutions to meeting our climate pollution reduction goals. So we've had a bunch of meetings about this. We held public webinars back in the fall of 2024, got a lot of great feedback. Then we've been running this alternative fuels and technologies working group that's helped us define how to credit biofuels and other emissions, life cycle emissions reductions as part of this development of the clean heat standard. So we've held almost one a month for the last year. So those have been ongoing and gotten a lot of good participation and feedback. And all of that's been helping inform the kind of next steps in this program design. And then we just actually presented this material about a month ago in a public webinar. And this is kind of the next steps in that feedback. And we've got a feedback. We did 2 webinars in May. We'll do 2 webinars in July, and we'll close kind of this latest round of public feedback at the end of July, take all that feedback, and then we're working towards kind of the next steps for the program after that. So I'm going to just go over today the clean heat standard for Maryland, some of the dynamics of the program, clean heat measures, credits, and retirement requirements. So that's the kind of key pieces of the program, and these are all kind of fit together to help us achieve these goals. So at a high level, a clean heat standard is a market-based program to bring more clean heating solutions to Marylanders through a credit-based system. The clean heat standard is all about cleaning our air, creating clean energy jobs, and generating energy cost savings. Clean heating solutions can mean a whole lot of different things, from heat pumps, alternative fuels, insulation, other energy efficiency projects that help reduce the emissions associated with our heating. The clean heat standard is a market-based system to find the most cost-effective solutions to achieve our climate pollution reduction goals and bring them to the top. So starting out kind of 30,000-foot view, why would we want to do a clean heat standard? The idea is it's a program designed for all Marylanders. It will increase the incentives available for building upgrades and alternative heating fuels. It will ensure that all Marylanders can access building upgrades that reduce indoor and ambient air quality pollutants, improving public health. The clean heat standards will also amplify existing work being done through federal, state, and local policies. We're building on existing efforts with the Clean Heat Standard. The Empower Maryland program has been running for the last 15 years, and it's been a big success, but it also has only ever applied to a subset of Marylanders. And especially now with changes going on, only the 4 largest electric utilities are kind of in the place right now to offer clean heat incentives, or starting next year to offer clean heat incentives to building owners. And so we've historically underinvested in Empower in low and moderate income communities. And so the design of the Clean Heat Standard is really meant to ensure that all Marylanders get access to the incentives and opportunities to benefit from clean heat. The program really is rooted in state law, which requires Maryland to achieve net zero climate pollution by 2045. The building sector, as Chris mentioned earlier, actually is the second largest, both in the air quality side of things, but also our climate pollution specifically is the second largest source of emissions in the state. And so, direct climate pollution from the buildings is about 1/6 of statewide emissions. And it's the department's, you kind of probably all know this, but our job is to create policies that reduce climate pollution as well as improve air quality. And so that's why Governor Moore tasked us in a June 2024 executive order to reduce climate pollution from the building sector. And our goal with the Clean Heat Standard is to build on the real successes that we've seen with the Renewable Portfolio Standard and bring that to the heating sector. So when we think about, and as we've been designing the Clean Heat Standard, our goal is really to reduce air pollution, lower heating and cooling costs for households, and increase access to incentives in a long-term predictable way, especially for low and moderate income households. So you already heard a little bit this morning. We're kind of right on the edge in our air quality improvements. One of the goals as we develop the Clean Heat Standard is to help ensure and make us and cement us into that kind of in attainment in better air quality for all of Maryland. And so this is, as we reward the transition to clean heat in buildings, the program's goal is to reduce harmful air pollution. It's the air pollution, I think everybody in this room knows it, but if anyone's joining us online that isn't maybe always as rooted in the air quality side, it really has a lot of impacts on people. Really very, common things like asthma and COPD that really affect lots of folks in the state. And so every place we can look to try to help and improve that air quality, we're looking at it. So, and as we do some kind of first analysis on this, by investing in clean heat, we expect that we can avoid hundreds of unnecessary deaths and billions of dollars in healthcare savings to Marylanders. So there's real benefits just in the health side of this alone. And then one of the other key goals I talked about, lowering energy costs. If you currently heat your home with oil or propane, which is about 10% of the state, and you've got an air conditioner, you're spending about $3,200 a year on average to heat and cool your home. If you've got natural gas and an air conditioner, it's about $1,900. If you've got a heat pump, which already includes that air conditioning, you're looking at more like $1,500 a year. So there's real cost savings for Marylanders. And that's kind of one of the things, these, $1,700 a year if you're coming off oil and propane, a few $100 kind of more similar off the natural gas. But the goal here is let's realize these. Obviously, there is an upfront cost challenge to making that transition. That's one of the things we're designing Clean Heat to help for. And so the kind of our goal here is to help encourage through CHS the adoption of heat pumps and other efficient technologies that help reduce those costs. And I will note, right now, the Empower utilities, so those electric utilities, can provide you up to $15,000 to transition from gas or fuel oil over to a heat pump. But that doesn't exist in all parts of the state. And so that's some of the things we're thinking about here with Clean Heat. I'll also just flag in the Utility Relief Act that just passed the legislature, the Maryland Energy Administration was allocated $72 million to help incentivize the installation of heat pumps in Maryland. So that's going to be a key part of kind of kickstarting and giving additional support to making this transition. As we look at Clean Heat, that's going to be a 2-year program. And our goal with Clean Heat is to kind of continue that investment in the long term through this kind of overall support. So just kind of also putting this in perspective, Clean Heat is paying dividends in other states. Colorado has a Clean Heat standard in place since 2021. And other states and Massachusetts is deep in the development weeds, just like we are. And we talked to them a lot about it. And then other jurisdictions, including DC and Illinois, are both pretty deep in considering clean heat programs for their own states. So there's a good number of states thinking about it. All these other states have also said that they would look into it and consider them. So we've got good company here. And it's really because it's a policy that helps support everyone's goals. Okay, so that was the background. Let's talk a little bit more about how this clean heat standard will work. And first, I want to actually define two key terms, one of which will be review for folks that were with us last year as we talked about the heating fuel reporting program, but a heating fuel provider. It is a company that delivers heating fuel, including heating oil, propane, or natural gas for final sale or consumption in Maryland. And I mentioned that heating fuel reporting program. We brought that all to you last fall. And anyway, last year. I can't keep track of the days, but we brought it to you all last year. And that program, we did adopt it in December of this past year. We made a couple of tweaks at the very end. And so it's an annual report. And that first annual report for all of calendar year 2026 data is due to us on April 1st of 2027. So that's the big thing. The heating fuel providers are already reporting this kind of first reports coming next year. But they're the kind of one of the key people in this system. And then we also have a clean heat provider. A clean heat provider is a company or contractor that installs or delivers clean heat measures to a building in Maryland. We anticipate that many heating fuel providers have already positioned themselves to be clean heat providers because they provide heating and cooling services. You call them up, they'll come tune up your furnace, they'll install an AC. That's just part of the business model that they've evolved into. And they also might provide alternative fuels already today. Actually, we've heard from several that do provide alternative fuels and are looking for ways to support that program. So Clean Heat is intended to help that. And these heating fuel providers are often a trusted part of their community. So who is a clean heat provider? What are these couple of different ways? So they could be a heating fuel provider that's delivering alternative fuels or installing building efficiency upgrades or things like a heat pump. They could also be a weatherization, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning HVAC contractor or a plumbing contractor that's installing a heat pump water heater, things like that in your building, or energy efficiency like air sealing and insulation. The utilities that run those Empower programs, they are usually the contractor acting on their behalf, are a clean heat provider. They're providing clean heat measures into people's buildings. And also it could be a builder or developer of a new construction project. So when you build a new home, if you're building that above and beyond code, there's the opportunity there. If you kind of add additional insulation, you do things that aren't required in code, that could also generate clean heat credits. So the Clean Heat Standard really breaks down into three key steps. The first is track the climate pollution with the heating fuel reporting rule. Two, earn clean heat credits. That's what the clean heat providers are doing. And then third, retire the clean heat credits. So let's break down each of these steps. So as I mentioned, the heating fuel providers are already doing that delivered fuel reporting to Maryland, and we can then calculate the climate pollution associated with those deliveries. Then clean heat providers are they're registering and earning credits for all of the measures they're delivering. So if they're installing the heat pump, they're delivering those alternative fuels, they get credits for that. And then finally, heating fuel providers retire credits to reduce their associated climate pollution over time. So let's talk about clean heat measures. I know there's a couple of different, couple of pieces of jargon. That's why we're here now. We'll keep talking about it. But these are kind of the core currency of the program. And there's two types. There's installed measures. These are things, the physical things you install in the building, a heat pump, insulation. They are physical, they get installed once and they stay in the building. That's called an installed measure. Then there's delivered alternative fuels or delivered measures. Those are a liquid, a gas. It's a biofuel that gets delivered, it's consumed once, and it's kind of done. And so that's the difference between these two things. Delivered has long lives. It's physical forever, or at least not forever, but 15, 20 years. Delivered measures, they get delivered 1 year, they get delivered another year. So when we've been looking at this, there's kind of certain measures that would be eligible for clean heat credits because they help reduce the climate pollution associated with those buildings. So things like insulation, I mentioned a couple of these already. Insulation and air sealing, that's something that would be eligible for clean heat credits as an installed measure. Heat pumps of all sorts. So there's geothermal, you might have an air source heat pump or a mini split, a lot of folks have. You could also, heat pumps are so efficient, we found a lot of different ways to use it. You can now put them in your dryer, in your water heater, and they'll usually use 2/3 less energy than the kind of standard electric kind of cousin. And so all those are great. The last one here, non-combustion alternative fuel-based district heating system. So if any of you are familiar with the Warmth Act or thermal energy networks, this is a kind of really big and growing field. Massachusetts has just piloted a thermal energy network up in the Boston area where the gas utility built an in-ground network of pipes. I just heard from them at a conference last week. Basically, it looks exactly like the gas pipes they put in to the ground, but instead of passing natural gas, they're passing basically just a coolant, antifreeze, just water basically, and some antifreeze through it, and using ground source heat pumps to heat and cool that loop, and then providing that to all the buildings. And so it's a kind of a different model for a gas utility that allows them to leverage their existing workforce and existing skills to install ground source heat pumps for a whole neighborhood. And it's seen a lot of success in the states. It's being piloted here in Maryland from a bill about 2 years ago. And that's something we want to really encourage even more of through the Clean Heat Standard. There's also some additional ones, advanced wood heat, solar space and water heating. Yes, Megan, that is geothermal. The technical industry term doesn't like to use geothermal because that's this high temperature geothermal, this power generation that you do out in Nevada or Iceland. Ground source heat pumps is the kind of more standard.
You're correct. Thank you.
Anyway, and then complete manufactured home replacement. This is kind of just a niche one, but when you deliver a new manufactured home that's above code, it's done as a system and it's regulated kind of separately from building codes. So that's more of a technicality than anything. And then there's eligible delivered alternative fuels. So I mentioned earlier, we've been talking to a lot of heating fuel providers. They're saying, hey, I deliver biofuel. I deliver a B10, a B20, even a B100 to my customers. I want to deliver more of this stuff. It might even be grown here in Maryland from soybeans. And I want more of my customers to get this stuff because I think it helps us reduce our life cycle climate pollution as we're looking towards that long term. And it's a business that I'm invested in. And so as we've been designing and developing this, we've been looking at that. And so the kind of three main categories of biofuels we're looking to credit here are liquid biofuels. That's a biodiesel or something like that. Renewable methane gas, biomethane it's often called, and then green hydrogen created through electrolysis with renewable electricity. So that's just yet another kind of gas-based carrier of cleaner heating. And one of the other things, so that's kind of the key. And then there's basically different types of fuels within that. So I mentioned like a B10 versus a B100. Those are different blends of biofuels that might fall under each of these. So, and we've been talking a lot about what those look like in this alternative fuels and technologies work. So a clean heat credit, another term to throw at you all, but this is the core currency of the program. And it is basically all about crediting the good things here in Maryland. So when you install a clean heat measure, deliver an alternative fuel, and you reduce you reduce 1 metric ton of avoided climate pollution, you generate a clean heat credit. It's the currency of the program. It's similar in many ways to a renewable energy certificate or REC that you might get for installing a solar system on your roof. That's the kind of mental frame to use to think about these, if you're at all familiar with that. And as we're designing this program, as part of Governor's Moore commitment to leave no Marylander behind, we've designed CHS to ensure that all Marylanders get equitable access to the benefits of clean heat. And to do that, there are 3 types of clean heat credits. So they all represent 1 metric ton of avoided pollution, but there's a low income credit for measures delivered or installed in households that where 51% or buildings where 51% or more of the households qualify as low income. Moderate income, where at least 51% of the households are low or moderate income. And then finally, a regular credit for all other residential buildings, as well as commercial and industrial buildings.
Zach, can I interrupt to ask a question?
Is that all right? Yep, go ahead.
So to calculate avoided emissions, you have to have some sort of baseline. So does that mean that you have to characterize the present emissions of a building in which you're installing ground source heat pump or whatever? Are they using propane? Are they using natural gas? Are they using resistance heating? And each of those would have different avoided emissions for the ground source heat pump.
You are asking about my next slide.
Okay. We should agree on this ahead of time. Good.
So I have 2 examples here, one for installed measures, one for delivered measures that will exactly work to answer your
You
question.
have to make that, you have to characterize what they're doing now.
Correct.
A lot more work. Okay.
But it's quite common actually already done in Empower. So there's a whole technical manual for Empower that says, I'm installing this calculation, for example. We looked at the Empower manual and it says, I'm installing a cold climate heat pump. I'm installing that instead of and fully removing a gas-fired natural gas furnace for the home and for the average Maryland home. And these can work in buckets. So for a residential home, it can often just be the same value over and over again if they're all similar sized. It's a little one-off, but it actually is fairly standardized at the residential scale. When you get to big commercial projects, then you get to these custom pathways that are a little bit more complicated. But for the average residents, it's pretty cookie cutter, basically.
Once you know the fuel,
Once you know the fuel, yeah, exactly.
But do you have to remove the existing gas furnace to get the credit?
Not specifically. So this is an example I'm giving because this math is very flexible. You could say I'm doing a dual fuel or a hybrid setup. I'm keeping the existing furnace, or I'm even putting in a new furnace. I expect it to only run, 10% of the year. And that just basically derates the credits by that 10%, or whatever the emissions are associated with it only displacing 90% of the fuel. So this is a simpler calculation than maybe some of the more detailed ones. I'm happy to chat about those, but it is really flexible to accommodate. I'm doing something different that isn't quite the full replacement. I'm doing, a 90% replacement.
Yeah, and I asked this because we had a home energy retrofit program that maybe Mark knows. It was called Step Up in my hometown, where we promoted all this. We had a huge adoption of mini splits, but nobody took their furnace out. They just used the mini split to save money and to improve the livability of the homes by heating or cooling where you were, when you were.
Yeah, it's quite common when we talk to a lot of the contractors in Maryland. They're installing a lot of these dual fuel systems where you kind of maintain an old system or even put in a new one, but it's only really running. I mean, they've even said usually they run less than 10% of the year. It's a 90% pollution reduction often. But in this very simplified example, to not try to get into all the math, you put that in, it results in 4 metric tons of climate pollution, and that calculates, it looks at what was the emissions of the furnace that was there before, what's the emissions, this one specifically, we're looking at life cycles. So we do look at the electricity as well that heat pump's now using, and do the calculation, what is the avoided climate pollution. And then we say that heat pump is going to be used for 15 years. It has an expected lifespan of 15 years, and therefore you can in total earn 60 credits for doing this. Then let's talk about the alternative fuels. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is it's a consumable quantity. So you deliver something and it is consumed. It doesn't have that long lifetime. But if you delivered 500 gallons of biodiesel, this replacing that same 500 gallons of home heating oil, that also has a 4 metric ton climate pollution reduction. And so you generate 4 credits from that. And then if you do that delivery of 500 gallons every year, you would get every year those 4 credits. So in that 15-year time span, you could also earn 60 credits. So let's talk a little bit about credit retirement requirements. To reduce climate pollution from Maryland's buildings, the Clean Heat Standard will require heating fuel providers to retire clean heat credits every program year. And heating fuel providers can do this through a few different ways. They can directly install or deliver eligible clean heat measures. They might be doing that already through Empower or through their kind of work in HVAC services in a building. They can contract with a separate clean heat provider, for example, an HVAC technician working in the community, to satisfy all or a portion of their needs as they see fit. They can also trade these credits. So these credits are tradable between parties, and that's really what helps drive this program at a market level of who's able to do the work most cost effectively, as well as establish an agreement with the Clean Heat Agency to satisfy all or a portion of their retirements. And that's something that we're kind of still developing, but the state, some of these state agencies are doing a lot of work already and will be generating these credits. And so we're trying to provide additional flexibility through this mechanism. We're going to hold a webinar on that in about a month. There we go. So this program, as I mentioned at the top, is essential to meeting our state's climate pollution reduction goals. For the last 20 or so years, we've been pretty flat. And so you can see a little bit bump up there, but pretty much flat in terms of the climate pollution. And this is from direct climate pollution from buildings. And so residential and commercial altogether, we've been flat, which is great. The state's grown a lot in those 20 years, and that's Empower doing all of its good work to reduce emissions, just as we're also growing the state. But we've got to get all the way down. Actually, it won't work because it's a screen, but we've got to get all the way down to that star in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And so we've got some work to do to actually achieve those goals. And so when we look at it, there we go. We've got some existing programs in place. For example, BEPS. For example, Empower is planned over the next 20 years to ramp up and do some more work. And we've got other programs like codes and things like that to help reduce pollution from buildings. And so you can see actually a 40% reduction already by 2045 from all the existing programs. But we've got to do some more and dig a little bit further to achieve that 2045 goal. And that's what these green bars are showing. So there is more work than just what's already planned to happen. And that's where the clean heat rules come into effect. And so reductions from planned programs, including the Clean Heat Standard, kind of make up that second half of the bracket there. And so that's what as we're designing the Clean Heat Standard, we're really targeting that kind of second half of the work to be done. And yeah, just to then kind of wrap us up. Actually, one other thing I want to just highlight, as we've been modeling this out, you can see that the first about 5 years to 2032, there's just all white space in those bars. So when we look, this is a soft start ramping program. We are designing it now, getting it in place, trying to track all the good work people are doing through installing those measures through those clean heat credits. But in the first few years of the program, we see it mainly being just a tracking program, understanding what we're doing and what the climate pollution reductions are looking like in the state, and helping encouraging us along the way. And then the work will really start when that green bar starts to fade in about 2032. And so we see this as a slow ramp over the next few years to help us get into the right pathway towards our goals and have a slow start to get there. So just to summarize a little bit here in closing, I know I threw a lot at you. You'll have access to the slides. We have a recording of this on YouTube as well, of both this session and an even deeper dive. Ben, if you want to hear more about the kind of clean heat credits and measures and all the methodology, it's on our Clean Heat YouTube page. And we spent half an hour plus going into all the details. But the whole goal here again is that we are going to track climate pollution to ensure clean air for all. Clean heat providers are going to install or deliver clean heat measures, building efficiency upgrades and alternative heating fuels to generate clean heat credits. And then heating fuel providers are required to retire those credits to ensure that all Marylanders can benefit. And CHS, the Clean Heat Standard, is all about working together to achieve Maryland's climate pollution reduction goals while improving Marylanders' health, creating jobs, and saving on energy costs. And that's it. I mentioned this all already. We had another webinar last week. We'll talk about credit retirement support in those clean heat agencies on July 1st and retirements a little later in July. And we've got feedback for the public and everyone here as well if you want through July 31st. So that's the kind of Clean Heat Standard overview. Just wanted to put up this timeline to close us out here. You've seen, I think, a version of this before, made some slight adjustments, but we've been talking about this. We've been stakeholdering this for the last 2 years. We're taking a lot of feedback right now. We're looking to 2027 to kind of bring these forward and act on them. Looking for currently designing the program start in 28. This is kind of Clean Heat Standard on the bottom. And I didn't talk today about the zero emission heating equipment standards. We're doing a lot of work right now with manufacturers, contractors to kind of do some revisions, and some other states to do some revisions to that rule, because based on a lot of the feedback we got. So more to come on that at a future update. And that's it. And if anyone wants to find out about more of these sessions and isn't on our Clean Heat email list, just find me afterwards. We'll get you signed up.
With the caveat that we still have one more briefing left, does anybody have any quick questions or comments?
I think I'll just chat with you. Actually, okay. So it was regarding the low income households and middle income households. I was just intrigued by, I guess how you, I mean, I'm not sure if you have the answer to it, but the 51% or above, how was that threshold decided? And I mean, we know in Maryland, we are all affected by heat stress and different heat related illnesses. However, it's important to remember that there's different access availability for all, right? So if we're talking about low income communities, I was just intrigued to see how that indicator, I guess, was characterized with the 51% or above, as well as the middle income household was 51% and above as well.
Yeah, so that's aligned with the Department of Housing and Community Development.
Okay.
So they kind of qualify buildings based on that 51% or larger.
Okay.
And that's their main criteria for qualifying a building on the low income side. And then we kind of repeated that at the moderate income.
Right. Okay. So then just the caveat off of that. So how is this access managed, right? I know you said you had a lot of feedback over the past 2 years. So is there going to be education programs? How are people in these low income communities going to know that this is available for them? What about spaces with no clean energy providers, right? So I'm just intrigued by that. But I mean, really wonderful presentation. I'm interested in it, so I will have a chat with you as well after. But just wanted to add my questions.
Yeah, happy to chat more after as well. But the whole goal here is one of the easiest ways to earn a clean heat credit is education about existing programs.
Right.
The Department of Housing and Community Development has a ton of really successful programs to help multifamily buildings as well as single family buildings transition to clean heat. And those programs have historically, the multifamily building with BEPS is now seeing a lot of interest, but especially the single family have been undersubscribed.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first things we're trying to do with this is, hey, we've got programs out there. Let's get the folks that are qualified and can benefit from them to those programs. So from our perspective, that educational aspect might be the first 5 years of the program, just kind of doing a lot of that education. Hey, there's these existing programs, take advantage of it, and we'll see and follow along that trajectory we're expecting.
Yeah. Just one more question and one more thought, because many of the times, like for example, the counties that are have more infrastructure or more affluent, they are aware that this would be beneficial to them, right? So they may come out in droves, but other people who may be in rural communities or, I mean, Baltimore's an urban heat island, they may not be aware of where to go. So, I mean, I'm really intrigued and interested. That's my last thought. But yeah, thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Such a thorough presentation.
Not a question, just one, I guess, suggestion or comment. So like when you compare those costs for like an oil or natural gas or a heat pump, so like we are seeing, like Marylanders are seeing this, like, I guess almost, I think it's about tripled last couple of years, like our electricity rates. So I'm seeing the 1,500 annual cost is not really representative at all because I pay probably out of those 2 coldest months already paid more than the $1,500. Because I have heat pump for my last 20 years all the time. So I'm seeing like all these like increasing trend with our electricity rate. So I guess it's something we need to probably work with. I guess it's a big problem, I think, right?
Electric rates have gone up. Gas rates have actually gone up more than electric over the last 15 years. And so it really is it's kind of scary if you look at them both. They're both been skyrocketing a lot. There's a lot of investment in the gas infrastructure that's now 2/3 of the cost of delivering fuel to you.
So even though it's like, triple, like from the 1,500, probably the natural gas prices also tripled. So comparably, it's still lowest.
And what you were showing us was new equipment.
Yes, and that's also true. So new equipment. So those were with kind of new, if you've got a 20-year-old system, there's
No, I have like, since like, before 20 years, I've been like, switching over to different heat pump. I think I'm at the 3rd or 4th one right now.
Oh, jeez.
It is, yeah, because I've moved and like, always, I'm always switching into everything electric. I don't want natural gas. So like, I'm using everything electric. So even stove, water heater and everything. So like, I'm really seeing this increase in electricity rate. And then it's just so steep. And yeah.
It's definitely a challenge that we're all thinking about right now. One of the things I'll just also say, here in Maryland specifically, one of the challenges has been getting adoption of those cold climate heat pumps that really do function when it's really cold at high efficiencies. And so they're really common now all up in the Northeast. That's basically the only thing that's ever installed, and they'll provide, it's called a COP of 2, but basically the 200% efficient at around 5 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which is as cold as it ever gets here in Maryland. But an older system might not quite have that same performance. And so this is this challenge of a transition in the market to these kind of really high performance systems that make a difference for your electric bills in the coldest months of the year.
Yeah, it's hard. We had electric rates going up for the first time really in decades. We'd enjoyed 20 some odd years of electric rates were effectively flat, going down a bit if you account for inflation. And then suddenly a couple of years ago, they started going up. And then we had 2 bad winters in a row. 2 winters ago was the coldest we'd had in like 10, 15 years. And then this latest winter, at least in Baltimore, was the coldest in the last 40 some odd years. So it was terrible timing for rates to go up when we really, really needed heat this winter. So we got to look long term. How do we lock in more affordable solutions for everybody? Yeah.
So, okay, I have a couple questions. A lot of questions. I'll try to restrict it to a few. So I assume, although you didn't quite say it, that there will be sales of these credits. You had marketplace at the 3rd bullet on one of the last slides, and I assume that if there's sales, there will have to be some requirement for how many credits the big utilities have to retire that will drive the market. So my 2 questions around that are, have you worked up some numbers? Do you have some idea of how much you expect the credits will trade for? That's the first question. And the second question is sort of a personal question, if you will, but these are publicly recorded. Are these for new equipment to be installed in 27, 28, 29, or for those of us who did this a few years ago, can we also participate?
Great question. So on the costs, we're currently kind of doing that analysis as part of our regulatory proposal work. So I don't have a number for you now, but we're looking into it. And that's the kind of part of the whole market dynamics here is what is this all going to look like?
And I assume at the bottom of that is how many credits they have to retire. Correct. So you work in those numbers.
Yep.
Okay. And how about is it only for new, or what's the grandfathering in part of this?
Good question and great feedback. As we're still in program design moment. So I talked a little bit, not in the slides I gave here, but in the more detailed. The current design has been that it is kind of from when the program is enacted. That's typically how we do programs here in Maryland. So like you can get credits for anything that happens after it kind of publishes. But we can definitely take your feedback. I'm sure that's probably not the only person that will have that feedback and take it into consideration.
Well, as a follow-up to that, I mean, you know, you have two synergistic things happening at the same time. You have this program and then you have the BEPS. And, you know, you might actually want to think about trying to link the two up a little bit. If someone's in BEPS, sees their costs skyrocketing, whatever, wants to go from gas to heat pump, what, you know, you know, you don't want to have a disconnect between your two programs. You might want to think long and not short.
Definitely.
Rebecca, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question about the component of the clean heat standard that is the biomass and biogas portion. I'm just wondering, it seems like the credits are calculated by end use. So in the sort of as a fuel alternative to what is currently being used in that building type. But I'm wondering if there's a life cycle component, like if we're, you know, thinking about emissions across sectors, is there in the production or, you know, or basically are we creating a market for something that exists or that doesn't exist and that we're creating the market for it? And is the production of the alternative fuel have any emissions in the life cycle that should be considered as part of the, including health impacts? Because that's what this is. The clean heat standard is really focused on, well, has a huge benefit to indoor air quality and health, but sort of from a life cycle component with those fuels in particular, are there considerations in developing, including them in a clean heat standard?
Yeah, great question. And so I didn't want to go into all the details here, but when we did that calculation for the biofuel and we said 500 gallons of a biodiesel is 4 tons of avoided climate pollution, that is actually a life cycle emissions rate. And so that's looking at the kind of full from wellhead. That's on a biofuel, you don't have a wellhead, but anyway, from the growing that, in this case, soybean was the example I gave, from growing that soybean to processing it into a fuel to delivering it here in Maryland. That's this kind of whole analysis. I'd say we developed, but not at all. We are using this GREET model, it's called. It's the U.S. Department of Energy's Argonne National Lab develops this GREET model. It's been used for 20 years. And it's pretty common, and especially common actually in transportation sector, but it's used here as well because it's ultimately similar fuels and similar dynamics. So that's this alternative fuels and technologies working group we've been developing. We've gotten a lot of feedback, and everybody said that this GREET model is still the best of the best to use to do this. And so it kind of incorporates all the different pieces of that kind of production life combustion at the end. And the climate pollution impacts from that.
Thank you.
Yep. We're gonna let Rebecca have the last word.
Oh,
Larry.
got my hand up. Keep it as brief as I can. So my question is about commenting question about administrative burden. And in particular, if we're wanting programs to be accessible to low income housing. As we speak, my HVAC contractor is starting up one of those super heat pumps. I got rid of my gas. We're getting a heat pump water heater. I'm sure there are incentives through BGE or somebody that's available, but I haven't done the work yet to do it. If it's hard for me to do it, so how do you make things automatic? Contractors always have to submit to a local jurisdiction for a building permit. That's just an administrative action that happens automatically. Can you link to something like that? Supplier always has to go, a contractor always has to go to a supplier to buy a piece of equipment. Can you link to processes like that are already happening? Make it automatic for the incentives to come in. That's the question.
Yeah, great question. Good feedback, and definitely something you're thinking about. We want to try to figure out how to make this as easy to generate and track all this great work that's happening, and then also get you the benefits, as they're market develops, if there's kind of a monetary value to those credits, then that gets passed as the person installing it, or having it installed in your home. So, yeah.
We'll make it automatic as seamless as possible. So, no administrative burden for the homeowner.
That is, that's what we should strive for, definitely.
And that'll be when we bring the regulatory components that establish the tracking, right? The crediting and tracking of those credits. Those will be moving pieces then. Yeah. Consider.
I have a feeling you're gonna have a lot to say about that section.
And I guess, so you mentioned that there were the three pieces, right? There's, step one is tracking and reporting the
Can
fuels.
you go down a couple of slides, please?
And this is just for, as we close this out, just what to expect. There's the one near the end, it had sort of
Like the second to last slide.
The first step is tracking, and there we go. Tracking and reporting on the fuels and the emissions.
One back up, Kelsey.
ACAC.
There we go.
ACAC's job for that is done. That was the reporting rule that you guys considered last year. For pieces 2 and 3, sort of tracking the credits and then tracking the retirement obligation for those credits. Zach, when should ACAC expect to see those pieces of regulation?
I think we're planning to bring more information to you guys by the end of this year, to kind of those drafts of the regulation by the end of this year.
And we'd like to move them next year. So end of this year, early next year, you guys can dig in. And Larry, we're going to ask you what you think about the tracking system when the time comes.
Zach, thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Great job. 2026 Clean Air Progress Report.
All right, so we'll hear from Catherine and Justin from the Air Quality Planning Program about the Clean Air Progress Report. There's also a one-pager in the room here for anyone. Copy, they're up at the front table here.
All right, so first slide, we just have some maps showing how our ozone has improved over the past 20 years, and that's 2025. Red and purple are way exceeding, and the green colors are showing closer to the standard or meeting the standard.
So the annual Clean Air Progress Report is a report we put together to communicate each year's progress that we've made toward cleaner air in Maryland. So every year we also put together a summary of each criteria pollutants levels and what we've done and how it's declined in the history of the state due to actions by the department, by individuals, and at the federal level too. We also highlight departmental actions and priorities. So you can see that if you look at the report itself, or you can look through the one-page summary. It also does a great job of making air quality information more accessible to the public. So we put things in a way that it doesn't take an air quality expert to understand. We're describing what happens that generates each type of criteria air pollutant and what individuals can do to limit it, and the public health impacts of criteria air pollutants that would motivate why you want to make those changes. And ultimately, it does encourage action by individuals who are reading the report, or by businesses, by different agencies in order to contribute to cleaner air.
So this is a graph that we include on every Clean Air Progress Report, and it just shows for about the past 20 years how every criteria air pollutant has improved. And that dotted line is the National Ambient Air Quality Standard for each pollutant. And as you can see, ozone, we went down in 2022, went back up in 2023 because of the Canadian wildfires. And then we are just on the standard for 2024 and 2025. And we'll get into that more later in the presentation.
Quick question, the impact of the fires and smoke is shown as in the uptick in annual PM 2.5. You see the line that's just below.
Yes. Yeah, right where ozone and PM 2.5 go up right there. That is also, it also contributed to higher PM 2.5. measurements.
There was also a change in the standard around that time too, where it became stricter. So you can see.
Oh, so the ratio.
Yeah, this is like a percentage of the standard. It's not the direct measurements.
Can you get the graph on full screen so it's more legible from?
I can try to zoom in, but
it's small.
The presentation, it is on the one-page summary, if anyone needs
Yeah, that's much better.
that.
oh shoot, all right. I don't think I can mess with it.
Sorry, this is the best we can get on this.
Yeah.
The changing standard though, so that applies to the annual PM 2.5, the dark blue line that's under the ozone line. So that uptick, part of that uptick was that EPA tightened the standard for annual PM 2.5, or we're looking at percent below the standard. So if the standard gets tighter, the line goes up. So you can see both the wildfires, but then it looks like we're trending in the wrong direction between the wildfires and the standard changing for PM 2.5, but we're not. It's that the standard was tight.
So the impact of fires actually wasn't that great.
For the annual calculation.
For the annual calculations, nor in the daily, yeah. Which I guess is good news. It felt big, but that was just for a few days.
Just for a few days.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this slide? This is definitely one of our important ones. So yeah, thank you for that. So as Catherine mentioned, ozone has historically been one of the most challenging criteria pollutants to attain because it is pretty long lasting. So not only are we dealing with emissions of the precursor pollutants, which is nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, but we also are dealing with emissions from neighboring states. So as a result, we have emission, like our monitors are measuring both in-state and out-of-state, including in the 2023 wildfires. So we're getting as far as from Canada. So during the hot summer months where these chemical reactions that produce ozone are happening, we're dealing with emissions that are not only from Maryland, but also from the surrounding area.
Okay, so we've been talking about the wildfire smoke events. Transported wildfire smoke occurrences fall under the category of exceptional events, which is a unusual or naturally occurring event that can affect air quality, but is not reasonably controllable by regulations or policies that state air agencies might implement to attain or maintain the NAAQS. To show that there is a causal relationship between an exceptional event and measured exceedances of the NAAQS, the states can submit exceptional event demonstrations to the EPA. We use this to request that the exceptional event impacted monitoring values are removed from the data set. In 2022, we measured ozone levels that met the NAAQS for the first time in history. But despite regulatory efforts that greatly reduced man-made pollutants, smoke from the Canadian wildfires in 2023 resulted in 2023, 2024, and 2025 exceeding the standard originally. So we have two lines at the end here. The blue line is what we were originally measuring at. So we were above the standard for ozone. Obviously 2023 is higher than the subsequent years, but the wildfire smoke influenced 2024 and 2025. So we submitted exceptional event demonstrations to the EPA for a couple days in 2023, and they ended up agreeing with our analysis, and that occurred in February of this year. So last year when we were presenting this, we said we did not meet the standard, but now with the exceptional event demonstrations being taken into account, we are now meeting the standard for 2024 and 2025.
This is a quick question. So Catherine and Chris, you both mentioned that other things change over time too that affect the picture. How about the monitoring network technologies? Are there any changes over this 20-odd year period that also affect how things look?
Joel, do you have any
Good, great
thoughts on that?
The number of ozone monitors has fluctuated quite a bit, yes, but this is representative of the lead monitor at any particular point in the state over those 3 years averaging.
By the lead
technology,
monitor,
it's
you mean where the largest exceedance took place? What do you mean by lead monitor?
so this is a fourth highest of a particular year, and that's monitor based. So where those numbers are, what the numbers are reflecting is the highest monitor of a 3-year average at one particular site.
Okay. So if we had more monitors over time, you'd expect there might be a drift up. You'd be detecting things that otherwise might be missed. If we had fewer monitors, then things might drift down. And so what's been happening over 20 years?
Possibly, but not to a large degree. So that for your first point of drifting up and down, since ozone is a regional pollutant, for the most part, you're representing a larger area pretty well with a single ozone monitor once you have a pretty good location. And if you did put ozone monitors everywhere, yeah, you'd see a little bit of a change, certainly. But for the 20 that we have across the state, they're pretty representative. We've gone from an exuberant number of like about the time I was born, a number of monitors when it was just coming on to now 20 across the state. And those 20 have been pretty consistent since 2010 or so.
Okay. Bottom line is having more monitors wouldn't have changed this picture terribly much.
Not terribly much though. Except in a way with Hart Miller Island. So let's talk about representativeness. Are we going to represent areas that people don't live in? Yes. Okay. So fair point. People on the bay, the boaters and all that. So we have the mandate to monitor where people are living and breathing. So a monitor on the Chesapeake Bay. Okay. We can talk about that. Yep.
This is because of ozone formation over Chesapeake Bay, Long Island Sound tends to be actually.
Yeah, and there was a
higher.
monitor for a few years on Hart Miller Island that we were testing on a basis. Yep. So that.
For those online, we've been hearing from Joel Dreesen, Deputy Program Manager for the Air Monitoring Program. And so as Joel mentioned, the line you see here, which is the state's ozone attainment in any year, is actually the worst place in the state in that year, effectively. Understanding there's a 3-year rolling window, which makes it complicated. But Joel, in recent years, these dots, which part of the state do they represent? Which monitors are the ones that are typically ones that are determining we're above 70 year to year? They're Baltimore, Essex, for example.
Yeah, either smack dab middle downtown Baltimore or to Aberdeen Proving Grounds. That between those two spots, that's the worst. Yep.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if it was like the urban heat island effect again, because VOCs and nitrogen oxides combine to make ground level.
Yes,
Ozone,
yes.
right?
And then they
That
flow
would-
downstream slightly, and so you get the peak just downstream. You can get centers. But Ross brought up the Chesapeake Bay, and that's actually a huge contributor in that area also.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you all for such a good question. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. So by submitting our exceptional event demonstrations, we were able to show that the wildfire smoke caused ozone exceedances. And now we are officially in attainment for 2024 and 2025. So good news.
And we did come into attainment during the worst fire period in history in Canada. So it is a huge success for Maryland to attain the standards. But it's also important that we continue to work for clean air progress, because that was due to things outside of our control and they could keep happening. So we need to limit what's going on that we can control to really impact public health in the most beneficial way. So attaining 1 year doesn't mean that we're going to attain the next year. As you've heard, we've already had a couple of exceedance days this year. So we're looking at what that might impact for the future, regulations and just what we need to do. So like, just because we were in attainment last year doesn't mean we will be, especially with changing weather patterns and also potentials of new sources coming online. So there with like data centers, rising energy costs, there are different priorities between Maryland state government and federal government, where we might have renewable energy sources coming online to meet those needs, but we also may have more polluting sources such as coal or natural gas power plants. So that's why we need to continue to take efforts and bring regulations online that are taking care of the precursor pollutants for ozone.
So outside of regulations, we further promote clean air progress through community involvement and tree plantings. We had 2 tree plantings last year. In April 2025, we partnered with Tree Baltimore to host an event in Baltimore City's Druid Hill Park. Over 75 MDE staff volunteered to plant trees, clear invasive species, and collect litter. In October of 2025, our Air and Radiation Administration partnered with Baltimore City Recreation and Parks to clear invasive species and plant over 50 trees in Carroll Park, which is just across the street. Each tree planting completed brings the state closer to achieving the 5 Million Trees Initiative, which is a plan to grow 5 million trees, native trees in Maryland by 2031. And then in July 2025, Governor Moore signed the Valuing Opportunity, Inclusion, and Community Equity, or VOICE Executive Order, unifying Maryland's environmental justice approach. Governor Moore emphasized that every Marylander deserves access to clean air, clean water, and resilient communities. The executive order is a significant step towards reducing pollution exposure and improving air quality in communities disproportionately affected by pollution. Among other mandates, the executive order directs state agencies to utilize MDE's MD EnviroScreen, which is a mapping tool that engages impacted communities and creates tailored solutions for environmental justice, specifically targeting resource allocation that can be used to reduce the impact of local air pollution sources. Ultimately, MD EnviroScreen aids community members and policymakers in assessing environmental burdens and tracking progress towards cleaner air.
So what can individuals do in order to help out with clean air? First of all, we do have on the MDE website the daily forecast for air quality, which is great to be able to look and make decisions for your own health and also like avoid contributing to more poor air pollution, or more air pollution on poor air quality days. So that's a great way to start. And then some everyday things that you can do would include limiting engine idling, setting air conditioning to a higher temperature during summer months to reduce your electricity use and also your electricity bills, and use environmentally friendly paints and cleaning products. There are also bigger steps that it sounds like a lot of the council members in the room have already been taking, including replacing fossil fuel fired equipment in the home with cleaner electric heating equipment or cooking equipment, which benefits indoor air quality as well. You can also change daily habits like refill your vehicle at dusk so that you're not contributing to those emissions during the higher ozone forming parts of the day. Combine errands to reduce trips, switch to battery powered lawn equipment or even battery electric vehicles, and use public transportation, carpool or bike instead of driving alone.
So in conclusion, we've achieved the long sought after goal, attainment of the NAAQS for all 6 criteria air pollutants. While this is a significant milestone, the commitment to providing clean air for Maryland residents remains ongoing. We're going to continue our pursuit of clean air, healthy communities, and reducing climate change impacts in the year to come. And this is a brief overview, but we encourage you to look on our website. You can scan this QR code to view the full report and read it online.
Nice.
Questions?
Remember, this needs to be practiced for Justin to explain science to children. Yeah. Questions?
Let's be on the test.
Yes.
Anybody online have questions?
This is exciting. Has this been shared? I feel like, like a big announcement or anything? Or is there plans for it?
We published this, was it on Earth Day or?
Yeah,
it was on Earth Day.
Cool.
I know the Sun ran a story on it.
Great.
Good news has a hard time breaking.
I think we have already gotten a lot more views on this report compared to this time last year. So for last year's report, so that's good. I think it was shared on our Facebook at one point, but yeah.
So it's just, we are having like these big data centers coming in, as well as like, planning for like a new natural gas, like power plants. Do you see like that will definitely impact like, the concentration. So like, is there any studies going on for that, or like looking into what the impact from those future changes might?
Yeah, and we know that when we met last time, there was a desire from the council to talk in more detail about data centers. So I just want to note at this point, we haven't forgotten. We'll have more on data centers coming. We owe a study to the General Assembly this fall. So once it's ready, we're planning on bringing that to brief the council. We have some, I guess, for the question about how is that going to change things between data centers and new power plants, we have some analysis that's been done on the climate change side that was incorporated for like different sectors in the buildings presentation. So it's going to make things more challenging to meet our greenhouse gas goals, certainly, if we're using more fossil electric power generation to meet that new demand. I don't know that we have any modeling specific for ozone or other pollutants that's so case specific, right? What power plant is running and how exactly does it run? So we don't have a specific quantitative answer. I think our qualitative one is, in order to stay in attainment, we're going to need to keep making sure we have the programs in place to deal with emerging challenges like that, as well as the adverse federal actions.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
Thanks. Yeah, it would also be helpful in a future meeting to get any updates on federal investments in coal. Particularly, there are some state plants that are making headlines. So just any updates for this group, I think would be pertinent. So if we could put that on the agenda for the next call, that would be really helpful.
We'll make a note of that, and maybe just for context for everyone, Rebecca, I think you're referring to the announcement last week that the Trump administration is giving out some grants under the carbon capture program that Congress passed. They are providing that money to coal plants and other elements of the coal industry to do things like turn coal power plants back on. One plant that had retired in Maryland, the Warrior Run facility outside of Cumberland, is receiving funding under that grant program to reactivate. That announcement was just the other day, so we don't have a whole lot of extra detail beyond that. But thank you, Rebecca. We'll note it, and we'll bring what we know to the next meeting.
Yeah, thanks for adding that context. And I certainly wasn't expecting you to have anything today for clarity. And I was just thinking that for the next, even if it's something you still don't have clarity on by the time we meet next quarterly, it would be helpful to keep this on the agenda to get updates as they're available.
Great, will do.
I have two questions and a comment. My comment first, great presentations. Presentation together. My two questions, one is about 24 and 25, which I'll ask first, and then I have a question about 26. For 24 and 25, was there exceptional event reporting for those specific years that also led to the designation, or was the exceptional event reporting, it was only for 23?
It was only for 23, but because our design values are calculated with a 3-year average, it carried over. So yeah, and it decreased for, all 3 of the years, but as you can see, 2023, we were not able to meet the standard.
Thank you. I thought it was 3-year average, and that's great to get this clarity just for the record. Because I was a little confused when it was brought in. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the exceptional event reporting is a huge amount of work. Which is so weird that you had to do all that huge amount of work because it was so obvious when it was happening and so many states were affected. But anyway, say la vie. Hey, it's being recorded. Okay. My question is about 26. Oops, I had it up. So 26, we had 92 in June 5th on Friday, 92 PPB at Edgewood, that was the highest, 11 stations. It was a whopper. I know, University of Maryland airplane was in the air making measurements. I know there'll be a lot of analysis and whatnot. Are we at risk of using this gold standard thing we got? Yeah, so.
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, it just depends. We're so early on into the season too, so we'll just have to see. But
Yeah, because 92 and 11 stations, 92 is high and 11 is,
You have to remember that the design value is calculated on a per-year average per monitor on the fourth high. So that fourth high is what you're looking at. So you can have 92, 99, and you're at 72, 71. 71 is enough.
yeah, but the more 90s we have, the worse it is.
Yes.
Yep, it's a numbers game. Yep. Good, thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know if there's anything to share in characterizing the event at this point. It was only Friday, but Joel, you're here at the table, so questions.
So I can comment on a couple of things. I guess first on Friday is that there was a lot of ozone upstream the previous day. This is like going back a decade of like what it looked like. And it had exceedances from Wisconsin all the way to Toronto, all the way south to Kentucky. That entire area was basically one big USG blob that went east. And you put that on top of temperatures here that were in the 90s, and then a bay impact, and then Edgewood was really high. And we could detect SO2 increases even at our Piney Run site. So we know that there was some SO2 hole, some influence somewhere in that air mass. So will that continue? Is that just a trend? Yeah, as Catherine said, it's kind of early to speculate too far into that, but that I can at least characterize that event a little bit more. Earlier on, the May 18th event that we had, it's interesting. We started talking about data centers and whether or not they're impacting. It is far too early to know what the impact would be, but there was an emergency call out on that day. And we have this great new satellite, the Tempo satellite, Ross, that can look at things in real time. And it was pretty hot for NO2 at the Sterling area, but I can't disaggregate that from the copious number of data centers that are at Sterling versus the airport. But it was very interesting that on that call out date that there was a bullseye of NO2 in Northern Virginia. So again, that's just one event, one off. It's tough to know, but these are things that we'll be looking at as time goes on.
So Joel, since we're talking, this is for everybody, and I'm following up on the question about future agenda that Rebecca asked. Data centers and diesels, so forth. There was in the last meeting, Larry and Ross had asked about that, and there was some discussion that maybe this would be a good agenda item for us sometime soon, an information agenda item on data centers and impact air quality. And I'm wondering if there are any plans for that. I know it's a lot of work for some staff member that's got other more pressing things to do, I'm sure.
Yeah, so we have, we owe a study on data centers to the General Assembly this fall. So what we want to do is, when that's ready, come and brief on the outcomes of that. And one of the topics within that study requirement is air quality. So we're studying air quality, water quality, a whole range of issues. So I don't know whether that will be ready by the September meeting. So the question will be, what meeting we bring that to, and because it's, the September meeting might be a touch early, but we'll figure out whether we move the meeting or move the presentation. We'll make sure we get it to you guys.
I'm very glad it's coming.
Other questions and comments? I think we've worn ourselves out. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank you.
Mr. Director, do you have anything else?
That covers the agenda that MDE has for ACAC today. Thank you.
Thank you all for a very good meeting, and also for the wonderful participation and attendance. This meeting really works best when all the seats are filled and everyone's actually in them. And today, I think we had that. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in a few months. Good summer. Hopefully not too hot.
No, not it.
That's the hope.
I'll be funny pit.